up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, North Korea releases one of the 3 American detainees it's been holding. Recent speculation Pyongyang is inching towards resuming talks with the U.S. Korea's foreign minister calls on Japan to resolve the wartime sexual enslavement issue to allow the 2 neighbors to usher in a new era of cooperation. Plus, the World Health Organization says drugs and a vaccine for Ebola could be available in West Africa from January. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Wednesday, October 22nd here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this lunchtime, in an unexpected move, North Korea has released Jeffrey Fowle. He is one of the 3 American detainees held in the country.
Mr. Fowle, who is already halfway home, is said to be in good health, but his release raises questions over the fate of the 2 other Americans being held by the North and what can be done to bring them home. Hwang Seung-hee reports.
Jeffrey Fowle, one of 3 Americans being held in North Korea, was released Tuesday. Without providing details, the U.S. State Department confirmed that Fowle was flown home on a U.S. Air Force passenger jet and appeared to be in good health. The 56-year-old American was arrested in April for leaving a Bible in his hotel room. While Washington welcomed Pyongyang's surprise move, it drew attention to the 2 remaining U.S. detainees.
We think this is a positive step. But that does not change the fact that we remain concerned about Kenneth Bae and Matthew Miller.
Washington thanked the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang for helping arrange Fowle's release. A senior South Korean official with knowledge of the matter said the move does not appear to be an outcome of talks between Washington and Pyongyang. But the prospect of dialogue between the 2 foes seems to be budding. Speaking at a forum in Washington Tuesday, U.S. Special Envoy for the 6-party nuclear talks, Sidney Seiler, rejected the widespread view that Washington is insisting on preconditions for restarting nuclear talks. Seiler stressed that the 6-party dialogue would have to be first and foremost about denuclearization, but added that could be demonstrated by North Korea holding off on its current nuclear activities. The U.S. official said Washington is willing to listen to North Korea's list of demands and complaints to encourage them to make the right decisions. Seiler said, however, that the problem is the North's unwillingness to respond. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign and defense chiefs are en route to Washington at this hour for security talks with their American counterparts. Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and Defense Minister Han Min-gu will hold their so-called 2+2 meeting with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel on Thursday, Washington time. North Korea and its continued provocations will top the agenda. Now, in addition to the 2+2 meetings, South Korea and the U.S. will hold their annual security consultative meeting where they are expected to fix the timing and conditions for delaying the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. The transfer is currently slated for the end of next year, but South Korea has asked that it be pushed back. Now, the Korean government has once again reminded Japan that the ball is in their court when it comes to improving the 2 countries' relations. Seoul says Tokyo needs to sincerely atone for its past wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women before they can start focusing on the future rather than the past. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's foreign minister has emphasized to Japan that a satisfactory resolution to the issue of wartime sexual slavery is the key to improving the 2 countries' strained bilateral ties. Meeting with Japan's top security advisor Shotaro Yachi in Seoul on Tuesday, Yoon Byung-se said Korea-Japan relations have been clouded by historical issues. The Japanese official's visit is part of Tokyo's bid to enhance bilateral ties and set up a face-to-face meeting between President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Yoon said Japan knows what conditions have to be met before Seoul agrees to hold such talks. The Korean government has said President Park could be willing to meet with Abe if Japan takes sincere measures to address the issues of its sexual enslavement of tens of thousands of Korean women in the early 20th century. Before meeting with Yoon, Yachi met with South Korea's National Security Advisor Kim Kwan-jin at the presidential office of Cheongwade. Kim also called on Japan to resolve Korea's grievances over Tokyo's colonial-era atrocities. The two discussed a range of issues, including bilateral relations and their North Korea policies. The South Korean official called for sincere efforts to build future-oriented ties, as next year the two countries will mark the 50th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic relations. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye will hold summit talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping at next month's APEC summit in Beijing. During a meeting in Seoul with President Park on Tuesday, former Chinese diplomat Tang Jiashan confirmed that the summit will take place, saying that President Park is highly revered in China, not just as a head of state, but also as a distinguished guest. Next month's meeting between Presidents Park and Xi will be their fifth since the two leaders took office last year. The last bilateral talks between them were in July when Xi visited Seoul.
The governor of Korea's central bank has expressed concerns over slowing global economic growth. Eoh Jin-joo says Korea should start easing regulations and improving financial stability to counteract the uncertainty. Hwang Ji-ae reports.
Despite a low-key interest rate and an expansionary fiscal policy, Korea's low growth trend could continue for a prolonged period of time. The remarks came from the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol on Wednesday at a financial forum. He cited the sluggish global economy as the reason, saying the slowing growth in Eurozone economies and in China are major risks down the road. China's third quarter growth came in at 7.3% from the same period a year ago, which marks the slowest pace since the first quarter of 2009. That's when the Chinese growth rate slumped at the height of the global financial crisis. To counter the uncertainties stemming from abroad and to prop up growth momentum at home, he said the Korean economy needs bold deregulation and structural reforms. Those measures, he believes, will improve investment sentiment and raise the economy's efficiency and productivity. The central bank governor also emphasized the importance of financial stability while the U.S. Federal Reserve is tightening its monetary policy. He acknowledged that massive capital outflows could take place in the domestic economy if market expectations mount over an earlier than expected rate hike by the Fed. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
Korean investors have turned bullish on foreign stocks. According to the Korea Securities Depository on Wednesday, the total amount of direct investments in foreign stocks was $5.7 billion, this as of Monday, and that is nearly double the figure from 5 years ago. Two-thirds of that total went to the US, with most of the rest going to other markets around Asia. Market analysts say investors are taking their money elsewhere, as the local market has not really been doing very much, with the benchmark Kospi struggling to break through the psychologically important 2,000-point mark in recent months. Now, the job market here in Korea is pretty grim, and the nation's high youth unemployment rate is forcing a lot of younger Koreans to resort to rather unorthodox, well, really very unorthodox measures just to find a job. Seoul's Jungang Daily newspaper reported on Wednesday that a growing number of job seekers with college degrees are leaving that fact off their job applications and instead listing themselves as only high school graduates. They are doing this, the newspaper says, because they believe their qualifications make it harder for them to get hired. We're talking about lower level, more blue-collar jobs here. An industry researcher quoted in the piece said employers can view highly educated employees as a burden in these jobs these days. Korea's youth unemployment rate was 8.5% last month. That's up nearly 1 percentage point from the same period last year.
And And we have some hopeful news on the Ebola front where a vaccine could be on the way. Eunice Kim joins us from the News Center for the latest on this and other global stories we're following at this hour.
Eunice, the World Health Organization has announced a timeline of sorts to send treatment options to Ebola hotspots there in West Africa.
Right, Mark. A serum in the coming weeks and a vaccine trial by the start of next year to West Africa are the goals that the WHO has put forth. This as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security introduced a new travel limitation to ease Ebola fears in the country. Our Connie Lee has the details.
A serum made from the blood of patients who have recovered from Ebola could be available in Africa within weeks. According to the World Health Organization, the serum, which would contain Ebola antibodies, would first be sent to Liberia, one of the worst-hit nations, to treat new victims of the virus. Marie-Paul Kinney of the WHO also said that a vaccine could be ready by this January to combat the outbreak that has already killed more than 4,500 people. This hopeful news comes amid some new restrictions in the United States. The U.S. government announced on Tuesday that starting Wednesday, travelers to the U.S. coming from the nations of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone must fly into one of the 5 designated airports in the cities of Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, Newark, New Jersey, and New York City. All travelers, even U.S. citizens who spend time in any of the Ebola-stricken nations, will go through an enhanced screening process for the virus. People in the U.S. seem pleased about the new restrictions.
I think that sounds like a good idea because for those 5 designated airports, they can certainly set up the proper medical facilities.
That's how you control it. Those are the people that are coming in. You know where they're coming from, not where they're not coming from.
So far, 3 people have been diagnosed with Ebola on U.S. soil, 2 of them healthcare workers. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Pro-democracy protest leaders and government officials in Hong Kong have wrapped their first formal meeting without a breakthrough. The dialogue was described by student leaders as vague, while state leaders called it constructive and said they hope to continue the talks to resolve the weeks-long deadlock. And just hours before those talks, Hong Kong's chief executive C.Y. Leung offered his first apparent concession. While the demand for universal suffrage would remain off the table, he said there was room to discuss opening up the formation of the key 1,200-member nominating committee so that it's more representative of the people. Thousands of people were back on the highways in Admiralty last night to watch the talks, broadcast live on giant screens. Acclaimed double amputee sprinter Oscar Pistorius has begun his 5-year prison sentence for the shooting death of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. He was transported to Pretoria Central Prison in an armored police vehicle shortly after sentencing was announced on Tuesday for culpable homicide or manslaughter. South African Judge Thokozile Masipa also issued a 3-year suspended sentence on a separate firearms charge, wrapping up an oftentimes emotional 8-month trial. Law experts say the 27-year-old track star could be eligible for parole after serving 10 months behind bars. And finally, Ben Bradlee, the iconic Washington Post editor who supervised the paper's famous coverage of the Watergate scandal, has died at the age of 93. Together with reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, Bradlee had raised the bar for American investigative journalism that ultimately led to the country's only presidential resignation by President Richard Nixon. Woodward and Bernstein remembered him as a genius leader who transformed the business with one unbending principle that was the quest for the truth. The Post said the newsman who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom last year passed away Tuesday night of natural causes at his home in Washington.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Tens of thousands of visitors and industry traders have been stopping by this year's World IT Show, which is taking place in Korea's southeastern port city of Busan alongside the ongoing ITU conference.
Yes, and anyone who wants to see a few years into the future, gadget and trend-wise at least, should definitely attempt to check out the show for themselves. And one person who knows all about it is our very own Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us live from Bexco, the venue for the four-day event. Ji-yeon, how's the show been so far?
Well, I'm having a lot of fun. This is the largest exhibition on information technology in Korea, with more than 400 companies from around 40 different countries taking part. And most of the gadgets presented here today by local companies are expected to be featured in upcoming expos, electronic expos, including next year's CES, or Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. So let's take a peek in the latest IT trends in Korea, which is one of the most wired countries in the world. Fast and smart seem to be the keywords for this year's World IT Show, where an array of products ranging from healthcare to smart education are being presented. Advanced technology is increasingly being utilized to add conveniences to our everyday lives, such as the simulation that helps you pick out what to wear. Korea's largest tech giant, Samsung Electronics, is among the participants. It's using the show to show off its smart home, where home appliances are connected through the latest fifth-generation LTE technology. In order to facilitate this smart trend, one of the country's largest telecommunications operators, Korea Telecom, says it has commercialized an ultra-high-speed giga internet service nationwide for the first time. It hopes to export the service to other countries such as Poland and Rwanda. The 1 giga internet is 10 times faster than the current version, and it only takes about 30 seconds to download a high-quality movie.
Like, as you know, the IoT things is kind of big issue in Korea, and cloud service is a big issue. But for this service, the strong network is principle for all the network things. So if you don't have like strong background network, they don't have any service. That's why it's very important for us and for our customer.
Information and communications technology has had a great impact on the Korean economy. A large portion of Korean exports come from the ICT sector, reaching nearly $84 billion during the first half of this year alone. Throughout the event, consultation services were provided for buyers and sellers, all of which came from various parts of the world.
Yeah, well, it's actually my first time in Asia, my first time in Korea, and my first time in an IT show this big and this important. It's pretty amazing the stuff you have here. Well, this 3D technology that it's next to us, I couldn't really prove the thing because it's in Korean and I cannot follow the steps, but it looks very interesting.
The World IT Show was also a chance for local small and mid-sized exporters to expand their business opportunities. Korea-based McKinley Company is promoting its smart wireless network that uses a unified infrastructure rather than the current diversified version, bringing down costs by reducing overlapping investment. And apart from the IT show, there's a convention on big data is being held today. Korea's Minister for Science, ICT and Future Planning, Choi Yang-hee, will give a speech in about an hour's time. He's expected to emphasize the need for a paradigm shift to incorporate big data for the future development of the ICT sector. Well, that's all I have for now. I'm reporting live. I'm Kim Ji-yeon reporting live on the ICT Show 2014 in Busan.
Well, thank you, Ji-yeon, for that. Now, wearable technology is also definitely one of the hottest trends in the IT sector, and a new report says the market is going to expand greatly in the coming years, with the gaming, healthcare, and retail sectors among those expected to benefit the most. Kwon So-ah tells us more.
There's been a lot of hype about wearable technology, but for most consumers, it's yet to make the leap to must-have gear. However, market watchers believe it's just a matter of time before the boom begins. Leading professional services network PricewaterhouseCoopers in a recent report forecast sales of some 130 million wearable devices between now and 2018. It says 53% of so-called millennials, those between the ages of 18 and 24, are excited about the technology. PwC suggests 6 industries will see the greatest benefits from the rise in wearables. Entertainment and media companies are expected to be the big winners, as the report says, where there's a screen, there's an opportunity. It might not be a revolutionary new genre, but analysts say it improves what's already there by enhancing the fun factor. The gaming industry is also expected to reap some benefits, especially within the kids and teenage markets. The health sector will also develop devices to monitor consumers' health. Social media, advertising, and retail businesses are also forecast to ride the wearable tech wave for profits. So the forecast seems bright, but the industry does face some obstacles. While the report says 1 in 5 U.S. adults already own a wearable device, it also revealed 1/3 of them didn't use it very often or even at all. Analysts say the biggest challenge the industry faces is convincing consumers their wearable device is something they can't leave home without. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, the bodies of 2 Korean tourists who went missing in Thailand on Sunday after the tourist boat they were traveling in crashed into a fishing vessel have been recovered from the sea in waters of Phuket. Officials say autopsies are taking place on the bodies of the 28-year-old woman and 31-year-old man to figure out the exact cause of their deaths. Nothing official has come out yet, but reports say they suffered head injuries. The tourist speedboat was carrying 37 people, including 3 crew members, when it hit that fishing vessel. All the other people on the boat were rescued safely at the time of the accident. Now, in health news, there could be hope on the horizon for the visually impaired. Recently published research shows the use of embryonic stem cells could help treat people suffering from acquired retina disease. Paulie reports.
These are human embryonic stem cells retrieved from fertilized eggs. A Korea-U.S. joint research team split these stem cells into retinal pigmented epithelial cells, which are cells that are responsible for absorbing scattered light, and transplanted them into 18 patients with damaged retinas. After 3 years of observation, the treatment appears to be safe and has restored some sight in 10 patients that had ADM, or age-related macular degeneration, vision loss coming with age. The research shows dominant visual cells have become active due to the newly transplanted stem cells.
Both Stargardt's disease, which is an orphan indication, and dry AMD result from the loss of the RPE cells in the eye. These RPE cells are the nerve cells that maintain the health of the photoreceptors, which are the cones and the rods that we see with.
Professor Lanza says that while embryonic stem cells have the potential to become any other cell in the body, the transplantation process is very complicated. But in this study, there were neither immune rejection responses from the patients nor were there any side effects. The treatment has been jointly developed by the U.S.-based Advanced Cell Technology and Korea's Cha General Hospital's affiliate Cha Biotech. The team is planning to increase the number of test patients to 100 by the end of this year. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The rain has let up in the most parts of the nation and the sun is shining down, and it should get sunnier as the day goes on. And it was really nice to see the sun after our recent rainy and cloudy days, though this morning was quite chilly and the daily highs will be similar to a tad lower than yesterday. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. Now the daily high in the capital and Busan will reach 18, while Daegu and Gwangju will see highs of 16 and 20 later in the day. Now on to other regions. Jeju Island will make it to 18, while Daejeon and Dokdo should top out at 17 and 14 respectively. Now it seems like typical late autumn weather will continue through the end of the week, but tomorrow morning is forecast to be the coldest of the season, with lows dropping to 6 in the morning. So be sure to dress even warmer for tomorrow's morning commute. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our Wednesday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.